Hi, and welcome back to Boise Entrepreneur Week. My name is Michelle Haynes, and I'm the VP of Business Development at InTime Tech. And here we have Cassie, who I had the opportunity to meet last night at the kickoff event. And I know a little bit about Cassie, but I feel like you should take that on and take that over.
Perfect. Hey, BEW, my name's Cassandra Wanek. I'm a banker with JPMorgan's Technology and Disruptive Commerce Group. This is my first BEW, so I'm super pumped to be here and to chat more with Michelle.
Yes. So we were just talking about siblings and birth order and how that actually manifests in our personalities and how that shows up. And then we were introed into this conversation with someone here is the older sibling, but not really. So you are the oldest.
Correct.
You're the oldest. I'm the youngest. And the question remains, like, are birth orders true to form?
And yes, and I think what was funny about this, and when we were chatting and we went live, I was about to tell Michelle that my group of high school girlfriends, there's 9 of us, only one is not the firstborn. So I think that's my evidence of birth order comes into play in terms of your personality and how you go through life. And for me, I think that's a degree of independence and sort of chart my own path and test the waters, see what works. In my case, I was the one that kind of got into trouble and then kind of set the boundaries for my younger sisters. But
they got to watch your example.
Exactly.
And learn from you.
Yeah.
Without living it. That's a gift.
Yeah,
I think all older siblings can give their younger siblings.
I think so.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So, Cassie, I have a question for you. At InTime Tech, we talk a lot about creating abundance. And really, over the years, I've been with InTime Tech now for 12 years.
Long time.
And it's really incredible to me that everyone defines that differently.
Sure.
What is abundance? And as soon as I found out that I had the opportunity to talk with you, that was a burning question I had in my mind. For you, when you look at your life, what is creating abundance for you personally?
Personally, yeah, that's a great question, Michelle. And I think, you can think about abundance in a number of different ways.
Yeah.
We actually just ran a Women of the Front Range panel in Denver, where I'm based, and we were talking about wealth, and the concept came up about wealth isn't necessarily just dollars in the bank, and when you're making these wealth planning decisions, some of the things that you need to take into factor of the vacation, right, and spending time with family, and maybe taking a step back from a career to build a family, things like that, wealth, abundance, I kind of put that into the similar category of it's not necessarily just the things that you can touch and feel. It's filling your life with things that are meaningful to you and then are going to make you feel, more fulfilled in your lifetime. So that can be anything from spending time with friends and family to giving back to your community, to exploring new things, doing new things, pushing your boundaries, things like that. And sometimes that just means taking a chance, right? You don't necessarily get the value back that abundance brings without, towing the line a little bit. But having been a part of a company where that's the culture, I'll turn it back to you. I mean, how do you define abundance personally? And does that change when you think about it professionally?
It really is the same for me personally and professionally, but just like you were sharing, it's less about something on the outside. It's less of something that maybe you can count. It's not always going to be money. For me, creating abundance is really a sense of how can you give more? How can you be more? How can you do more? But what that more is might change in the seasons of your life.
Sure.
So creating abundance could be an aspiration of, I do want to be financially free, because once I'm financially free, I have the ability to show up maybe differently in life or put my time and energy into other pursuits where I can make a contribution and I can make a difference.
Sure.
But it could also be some of those intangible things of, am I peaceful? Am I joyful? Am I inspired moment to moment? And can I show up in life that way consistently? That is abundance for me.
Yeah.
Am I peaceful, joyful? And am I being a source of that for other people in my life too?
And the back half of that is super important, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Completely. because none of us live alone on an island. We're all in this together, right? So a lot of richness comes from just being in a relationship and being able to make a difference in the greater community.
Yep.
And I think, too, when I look at the crowd here at Boise Entrepreneur Week, there's such a sense of that in general. Yeah. We're all trying to forward the action. Mm-hmm. We're all showing up to share content that's meaningful. Yeah. We want it to make a difference. We want it to move the needle. I see it everywhere around here today.
I love that you said that too, because I was actually just having a conversation with somebody recently. One of the things, I've been around Denver Startup Week. I've been around Silicon Slopes in Utah. I'm just scratching the surface here in Boise. And one of the things that I find super palpable here is you've got companies of every stage, right? You have solo entrepreneurs who are getting an idea off the ground. You've got these mega companies who have built, such a rich environment and everything it's the full gamut in between. But you've got the likes of, In Time Tech, of Micron, of HP, of Albertsons, of St. Luke's. You've got all these large companies funneling back abundance, right, into the system to keep it running and give these other folks an opportunity to get their idea off the ground, which I think is just like super palpable to see in such a kind of contained environment. And this location is awesome, right? This building is pretty special.
It's beautiful.
It's got a great energy.
This team has really put together something extraordinary.
They have.
And I love what you're sharing in the sense that everyone started somewhere.
Yeah.
When you think about these companies, it started with someone having a dream.
Yeah.
And taking the risk.
Yeah.
To do something about it. And 20 years later, 30 years later, 40 years later, whatever it may be, going, okay, I still remember what that was like. Mm-hmm. I lived that, I experienced it. And how can I take everything that I've learned and truly pay it forward? Yeah. We're talking about being the oldest sibling. Yep. And I know that I'm the youngest, but I wish I was sharing with Cassie. So I'm the youngest, but I have two older brothers. So in some ways, let's be honest, I was the more responsible one.
Youngest sibling, oldest girl, ran the roost, I have to imagine.
Exactly. Yeah, you have me pegged. So in that way, it's kind of being that older sibling and saying, how can I take care of? How can I nurture? How can I grow? How can others really learn from the maybe mistakes and the breakdowns and the breakthroughs that I've had organizationally? So it's a good place to be.
Huge. And I love what you said about, like, it's about the mistakes just as much, and if, in fact, maybe even more than the successes, right? Because we all need to learn from other people's mistakes if we're going to avoid like those pitfalls ourselves. And I think the environment of like sharing failures and like lessons learned is super vulnerable, right?
Cassie, you should start a learning group. That would be phenomenal.
I've got plenty of failures I can share.
Lessons learned, learning group.
Yes,
but
exactly.
That's where you grow. Yeah. Without pain, and I know that's a heavy word, but without pain, we seldom challenge ourselves and push our boundaries and understand really what's important to us.
I'm in the process of studying for the FINRA exams that I need. I've just started with JPMorgan 3 months back. Okay. And so part of that, I have to pass a couple of FINRA exams. Mm-hmm. And Notman Marks, who runs kind of like our training program, likes to say fail forward.
Yes.
And I think that fits that mold perfectly, where it's like, even when you're not winning at every stage, sometimes when you're failing, you're learning from it, and that makes, if not your experience, others' experience better. Yeah.
So what is one falling short? I won't call it a failure, but one falling short that you've had that was transformative for you as a person?
Sure. My first company, this is the third company I've worked for. At my first company, I ran a small kind of client relationship management service team. And one of the things we started doing is we would do like an immediate team huddle after some sort of problem or incident. Mm-hmm. And in fact, it started after the incident I caused. I went to attach a file to send to a client, and I attached the wrong file. And it could have potentially, if it was any other file, it could have been like seriously a big deal, like other client information, data breach, the whole nine.
Totally get it.
But as a result of that, I think it created this, culture of transparency where like I screwed up, here's what I did wrong. Here's what I want to do to make sure none of you, run into the same problem. And like, how could it have been prevented? How do we change our process, our controls, the way that we think about the speed at which we do things?
Yeah.
How do we reduce some of the pressure on it's not just like go, go, go. We need to make sure our work is solid. Like things like that, kind of creating a culture of let's learn from each other's mistakes and try to avoid. Don't fall into the same pitfall I did because, yeah. What about you?
Yeah, that's really good. I think more recently, business development is newer to me. I've been in it for about a year and a half, and like I shared, I've been with In Time Tech for 12 years. So I've grown up a lot with the company, and I've had this opportunity to do a lot of different things. There's been a lot of variety in my roles. But one thing that really hit home for me as a transformative learning when it comes to building relationships, working with others, being in that business style of relationship is that you work as a team. It's truly one team. Even the person that you're talking with and engaging with, they're already a part of your team.
Yeah.
And there isn't going to be one thing that is the cause of something being successful or being something that ends up not working out.
Right.
And not somehow being a cause in the matter and realizing that what you do matters, but also not assigning yourself the sole responsibility of that success or failure, if that makes sense.
Sure. It makes complete sense. And I mean, it's like, I think like human nature to take ownership for successes and kind of like pass off failures to others, right? Like I think that's just kind of how we're wired to some degree. So you probably have to fight that to some extent.
As a kid, that's how we all survive in our homes, right? Like
especially with two older brothers. You were probably the scapegoat a time or two.
Siblings for the win. Yeah. All right. Well, we will be back, but first, a word from our sponsors.